Want to welcome everybody to this showcase series where we're going to be talking about how to create professionally formatted facilitator guides. So we're going to take a look at some of the best steps that we should be including, and then we're going to showcase how LeaderGuide Pro can make this even simpler for you. With that being said, my name's Pat Michaels. I'm the Chief Learning Mechanic here at Great Circle Learning. And we are going to dive into, the key steps on what we can do to make a professionally formatted facilitator guide. And really, these will also pass along to participant guides and other training materials, but we're really going to dive into the facilitator side of it today. So that being said, for those who don't like to sit through the whole thing, if you just wanted the main points without any of the ideas behind them, here they are under the agenda. So we're going to talk about visual identity, structure and organization, visual enhancements and cues, typography, white space, and consistent formatting. So, right out of the box, those are the 6 things, but I think there needs to be a little bit behind those. So don't tune out. Let's kind of dive in and see exactly how these all work. All right, so first one, visual identity. What do I mean by that? And what you're going to see as we go through this is visual identity kind of plays a role into all of these. So this is more into all the other items, but it's the main piece. And so when I talk about visual identity, the first thing, it's about being consistent or consistency. So at the end of the day, what we're doing, we need to be consistent. Obviously, consistent delivery, right? How do we do evaluations and all that, but when it comes to formatting our guidebooks, we want consistency in there as well. So a nice way to think about it, especially many organizations, maybe marketing, somebody has come up with some style and branding guidelines. This is a great place to start from. So items that will kind of fall into your visual identity, the logos that are being used, fonts, the formatting that we apply to that text, to the fonts, right? Your color schemes. Other items that I probably should have loaded up in here is, the icons that we use, how we lay things out on the page, right? When we start talking about our table structure, as we're going to get into another point. But all of those items are going to fall into our visual identity. And the best way to sum it up, your visual identity provides a standardized look and feel for your material. Right? I've talked about it before in other sessions, and again, we want to be consistent with this. But we are looking for items that are, we want our people to be comfortable with what they're doing, and humans by nature like consistency. So the more we can provide items, in the look and feel, they find comfort in that consistency, and so now when we push them into an uncomfortable area, they still have this baseline of comfort in what they're seeing or in how we've laid things out. So obviously, as is with all things, psychology plays a big role in what we do. But let's use our visual identity to our benefit. So after visual identity, I jumped the gun. Structure and organization. And for those who've never sat through anything with me, this is a big one. For those who have, obviously structure and organization, I'm going to harp on it because it is the structure. It is the foundation of all that we should be doing in training. So I want to visually give you a view of this. So let's say we're going to build a training on customer service, because that's always my go-to example. Right, so customer service is our program. Then we've got all these different items, right? We've kind of thrown down a mind map of all the different items, right? Handling customer complaints, we're doing email, and we're greeting customers, and phone, and all of these items. And if we don't have a structure, we can go in a very linear path, but it may not be a straight path. It could be bouncing all over the place. So if we look at this in another way, again, customer service is our overall program. We start putting a structure to this. So our program of customer service is made up of modules, which we're going to see of customer facing, phone, and email. And in each of those modules, so like customer facing, we've got a greeting customers one. We've got a handling complaints lesson. And underneath the phone module, there's a lesson on answering phones and handling complaints, and so on. So this structure allows us to start working in a manner that everyone is comfortable with. People have learned this, this hierarchy structure as we go through, right? Modules could be the same as terminal objectives. Lessons could be our enabling objectives. Topics or subtopics, whatever terminology you want, but use this hierarchy structure, right? And then if we go another level, right, in addition, you should always have an intro and you should always have a conclusion. So in a bigger course where, right, I've got multiple modules, I have an introduction module, and I always put in a welcome lesson, right? This is tell them what I'm going to tell them. Here's what we're going to be covering today, right? And then I sum it up at the end. Here's my conclusion module, and tell them what I told them, like my summary lesson. On a shorter course, maybe that introduction and conclusion, or welcome and summary, however you want to look at it, become the first lesson and the last lesson in my shorter course. But the structure allows us to build a large document, or it allows us to build a small one. We could build all of customer service and all its pieces, or we could build handling customer complaints for email as an individual item and then later on pull those all together. So the way LeaderGuide Pro does this, and I've got a sample document here, or an example LeaderGuide Pro document. And just to quickly look, on the ribbon, I'm going to use the go-to feature to jump to my table of contents. So in this LeaderGuide Pro document, we're going to be just at the moment looking at this modules section. This is really where the training, the in-the-moment reference guide portion of a facilitator guide comes up. But there's a couple ways we can get this structure into place. If you were to bring in from PowerPoint, since I'm not going to actually bring it in from PowerPoint at the moment, but if I had a PowerPoint and I was going to use this as the baseline to start building my guidebook, there's a tool as we go through. Let me pop back over to the right document. I'm just going to show you what that dialog box looks like. One of the dialog boxes as we're going through of bringing in our PowerPoints allows us to put in module and lesson tags, and that's what we see here, module and lesson, and then all the underlying slides would fall underneath the corresponding places. So when we bring in our PowerPoints, we can put this structure right into place. So if that was our starting point, LeaderGuide Pro gives you that capability. Let's see. The screen that I'm sharing is blurry. Is it better now? It may be because I zoomed in. All right. I apologize. I'm not sure why. Is anyone else seeing a blurry screen? That's right, Julia. I understand. You want to yell at me. I get it. I'm cool with that. So I'm not sure. I will say that the screen, the recording will. It's blurry for everybody. Awesome.
It's not blurry for me, Pat.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
the recording will come out cleanly, and so we can have this, and I will get this. The recording will go out by email tomorrow. So other than doing a live troubleshoot of what's going on in my computer or the internet or wherever, we're just going to kind of move along. So thank you for your understanding and patience. All right, so that's one way. We can bring in our modules and lessons, or put our modules and lessons as we bring in a PowerPoint. We can also do it on LeaderGuide Pro, in a document, on the ribbon in the modules and lesson control section of the ribbon. And the way this works, and I'm just going to scroll down into a document, right? So like here, I've got a let's call this my welcome lesson. Where I put my cursor, if I was to click on either module or lesson, it will insert where my cursor is currently located. So I've got my cursor here at this paragraph mark. So when I click on, let's say if I put in a lesson, I can give it a name, and I'll call it another lesson. And now it's inserted that into my document. So I'd have, there's my welcome lesson, there's another lesson. I could now put in another module. And whenever with LeaderGuide Pro, whenever we put in a module, it always prompts us for a lesson. Just all terminal objectives have to have at least one enabling objective. This is what allows us to do that. So I could go through and put that into place. So now, if I just jump back to my table of contents, notice it still has the original structure that was built out. So quickly, I can rebuild this by clicking the Update All Fields button, which looks like a page with an exclamation point. It's that button right there. So when I click on this, it would then go through and lay it, it rebuilds my table of contents, and I can now quickly see the structure that I built out. So we can get back to that style of structure. So when we're working to professionally format materials, have a clear, consistent structure that you use. Again, the psychology of, human comfort. The more things people can be comfortable with, when we push them into the uncomfortable, which is obviously training's about, they've got those areas that they can sit back and kind of have those warm and fuzzy feelings about. And who knew that your table of contents will make people warm and fuzzy? But it does. All right. So now let's talk about visual enhancements and cues, which is the third item that I think is very important for professionally formatted materials. So how do we drive actions consistently, right? What do people see? And again, we're looking at this from a facilitator guide. And so in a facilitator guide, we want our facilitator to be able to quickly look down at the material, get back up in front of the camera, back up in front of the class. So we're driving actions off of icons. And so if I was to, I'm going to flip back over here to our LeaderGuide Pro document. And let's get down into the material, right? So let's get to this module or lesson. So on this welcome lesson, right, if I want the facilitator to say something, I can insert a content block, and I'm now driving driving actions for my facilitators to do by specific icons that we're consistently using, and they're going to mean specific things. So they see the clock, they're going to finally, eventually they'll realize clock equals here's how much time we're spending in this lesson. Or in this case, the gray cartoon bubble, I want the facilitator to be saying something. So I've got the icon and tied to some sort of headline, and I'm able to drive actions, and I could, give them clear and concise information of what I want them to be saying after that. Right? Or I could, put in another type of content block, right? Like here's the learning objective of what they're going to be doing, and we'll just use some random text, but I could quickly start filling these out, but I've got a consistent look and feel. One of the templates that LeaderGuide Pro uses, and again, excuse my scrolling, out of the box, you've got a graphics cues page. These are all customizable, and I know like Julie and Chris who are on here, they've got their own look and they're using their own icons, and they've built out their own graphic cues. But think of this like your map legend, right? These are everything the facilitator could possibly see in the guidebook and what they mean, right? So when you're looking at a map, you don't always have mountains, but that the mountain symbol is on a map, so if you do see it, you know what it is, right? You see the key points content block here, you know what it is, and when we look at the facilitator guide as a study guide, as your facilitators are preparing for the class, or your producers, as they're flipping through and they're not sure what an icon means, it's here. But I'm using the consistent look and feel. In this case, let's say it's matching my brand identity within its color schemes and the iconography that we're using. But we're also consistently using the same ones for the same type of material, so our facilitators know what they're supposed to be doing. So visual cues, I think that's, it's a fairly simple one. It's a simple concept to understand. It can be difficult to manage, if you're doing this all manually. But the other item I talked about this was visual enhancements. And that was my way of saying, like, when we're bringing in pictures, right, smart art, other things into your training, right, how do we handle those type of things? It could be as simple as, I want to have, in this lesson, I need to bring in, an image. And so it could, where do we put it in the page? How do we lay it out so it doesn't start floating to another location? But LeaderGuide Pro gives us some nice capabilities for handling this as well. In the insert section, the middle choice, it's our insert docs and pics. Actually, I think that's not the exact name. Let me get you the name. Insert pictures and text objects. So the way this works, where our cursor is located, let me turn that off. Let's put in, we'll put in a block. Like if I want to, say, have an image over here in column 3, get my cursor where I want it, and I click on this, and I now have some control over how do I want to bring it in. And if I'm bringing in I'm working at the picture side, but we can also do text. But when I bring in it, I could automatically set it to a specific height or a specific width, and then it will scale automatically. Or I could, if I do none, it will fill it to the size up until the largest size of your image. So if you've got an image that's half inch by half inch, that's as large as it's going to be. But if I've got a 12-inch image, but I'm going into a 2-inch content block, it will come in at the size of that cell block, I should say, not content block. But I have control over, do I want to embed it or link it or do both? So we're giving you some functionality on how we want to lay things out. One, to make it easy for delivery or for studying, also for development purposes or for editing purposes. Right? So in this case, let's say I want to embed my image and I want to, I don't want to border. I could put a caption or anything like that, but I just, I select OK, and it's going to prompt me to go find my pictures. So I need to get to my pictures folder. Right, so I've got some images here, so I'll just select this one, and it would bring it in and size it as I needed it for that location. Where if I was to put that same image over into column 2, it would fill up that size. Or I could go through and if I was putting it outside the table, I could choose it, same image. I haven't changed anything. I haven't resized any of it, but it brings it in as I've set it up. Or lastly, just to put this into perspective again, I could do, let's say, fixed height, and I only want it to be 2.5 inches wide. Right? And so let's actually add a title to it as well. And I want it above center. Right? Choose everything. And it's the reason why I actually, user error on my part, I did not have the way the titles or the captions work. It's based off the naming structure which I didn't have this set up. So I tried to do more than I actually practiced with this. So, I apologize. That's just sometimes live I get the idea of like, hey, let me show you one more thing, and it just doesn't work. And that's based off of me not doing it correctly. But that's the idea. Visual enhancements, visual cues, we want to have those in our guidebooks, that we can help drive actions, but again, in a consistent manner, right? We're going to be coming back to this word a whole bunch on this. We want to be consistent in what we're doing. All right, so we did visual cues. So typography, right? Fancy words for what do our fonts look like, right? What fonts are we choosing? Obviously, again, if we look at our visual identity, probably in that branding guidelines, we use Arial or we use Calibre. My guess is you don't use Wingdings, but which ones do you use can be it can be determined. One from our marketing group, but what does it look like in print? What does it look like on a PDF? So our final outcome, what are we presenting to the public, may determine on what you choose. Right? Do you use serif? Do you use sans serifs? All of those type of things. But one of the items in the way LeaderGuide Pro handles this is in your collection, again, which is a series of templates. So when we build out a document with a LeaderGuide Pro, you choose a collection, which is going to dictate certain items. But one of those items in there is a style guide. And so in this style guide, we get to say what certain things happen. So when we use our body text, which what we call LGP text, is this font, this size, this color, right? Where my module name is this font, this size, this color, this much spacing before and after, all of those type of things. So in the way this works, just quickly, I'm going to open up our styles box. But what I can do is I can come in, and there isn't a test on how you handle it. I just wanted to show you real quick what you're able to do. Is I can come in, I'm just going to modify my LeaderGuide Pro text and anything that's based off of this. And I'm going to make some pretty awful choices so you can visually see it. But let's choose, Algerian, and I'm going to make it a larger font. And again, you're not going to normally make these choices, but visually it's easier to see on the screen. Right? And let's choose this kind of, I guess it's a maroonish, purplish. I'm colorblind. Whatever color that is. But we'll choose OK. So we can quickly go through our template, our style guide, and set up what does my body text look like? What is my headline text? And we use different wording for it. But when a module comes in, what does that look like in terms of spacing before and after, and the font, and maybe do we have an outline box around it? All of those type of things we can quickly go through and set that up. And now going forward, whenever we build a document, it's going to use the style guide of that collection. So this was just my example. Now if we flip back to my document, and we're kind of doing this like as if it was a kitchen show, a cooking show, right? I've kind of got one already built out. And again, I use some fonts that you normally wouldn't do, again, just so you could see it. But the great part on LeaderGuide Pro is, Kim doesn't need to know exactly what font, what size, what color, spacing before and spacing after. You just have to think, is it headline text? Is it body text? Is it bullets? Is it numbers? And then the collection will drive it when we use specific buttons on the text and table formatting section. So in the text and table formatting section of the ribbon, which is here, there are some specific buttons. Let me zoom back into this. So this first button, first blue line button, that applies the headline style. The second blue line button applies the body text, bullets, numbers, and then these buttons here are about promoting or demoting my bulleted list. Those ones are about promoting and demoting my numbered list. But to see this in action, all we need to do, like, are we tired of the monotony of PowerPoint? This line here. If I want to make this regular body text, I just put my cursor in that line, and I click the first blue line button, or I'm sorry, the second blue line button, which will give me body text. And it would go through based off my style guide. That's part of the templates that, or the collection. When we built out the document, it would apply this. Right? If this was a bulleted list, I could quickly go through and get those into place. Right? And so I can quickly lay things out, and if this was a headline, right, I'm able to get my look and feel with just a few clicks. And I'm meeting my visual identity because at one point I took some time to update my collection, or you brought us on to help you do that so you could just work on the material. Right? We've got that functionality to make the typography that you've thought about. How do we quickly put it into action? Right? Versus you having to go through a document and highlight text and come to the Home tab and sit and choose and put on your text effects or whatever those type of things are. And then because it's all being done directly or manually, what I choose may be different than what Riley chooses or what Stephanie chooses. So we get disparate looks versus having a style guide that drives us and that we can automate off with just a few clicks of a mouse. Get our cursor where we need it and apply it. So that typography, right? It's huge. It's really the look and feel of our document after we take into effect, the icons and the colors that we're using. So typography, who thought we'd spend a whole bunch of time talking about fonts, but it's important. All right, second to last one is white space, right? How do we manage our documents, right? Obviously, some of our trainings may be really large, some of them may be smaller, and if we're printing, you've got to consider how much paper we're using, or ink, or the cost, or how many pages of that PDF. But don't be afraid, especially in a facilitator guide, to give space or to provide white space, right? Areas where things aren't happening so that your eyes can quickly get the information that they need, right? Again, the idea is we want our facilitators to be able to glance down, get the information, and be back up in front of the camera or back up in front of the class. And if we give large stretches of text, it makes it very hard for them to do that. So let's pop back over here. So as an example in here, I'm just going to give myself a little bit more space. I'm going to right. So if this was, in this document, obviously there is white space, right? We've got our margins, right? Word does this, right? It gives us margins, right? There's a certain amount of spacing after every time you hit return, and that's actually one of the reasons why LeaderGuide Pro always turns the formatting on, where you're seeing these paragraph marks, is that so you can see the formatting that's happening in a document. But so we've got white space there. But as we actually put in content blocks, so let's say this first item here was just a key point. So I could highlight the text, I could come over, I can choose a key point. It starts bringing over the information, it can bring it over into a specific content block. And whether it's a 2-column or a 3-column, right? The content block itself gives a certain amount of spacing before the information, a certain amount after. So as I put in another content block, right? Let's say this was a knowledge check, right? It's already set up, so now we've got white space with our margins, we've got spaces in between our icons and our text, and in between content blocks as they fall on the page, that we can really drive home where, we're kind of breaking a specific thought process or a specific item or things that we're saying just off the content blocks that we use, right? And then if you're in 2-column or 3-column, right, maybe I've got at some point on this key point, there's something I need the facilitator to be doing. Right, it's now broken up in a manner where column 1, I've got my visual cue. Column 2, here's the information that we're delivering. Column 3 is set up in a way where the facilitator has instructional cues on what they're supposed to do, or however you choose to do it. But again, let's be consistent in the options, in the choices that we make. But I can come back through, and I'm able to, manipulate this so that the spacing that's available is, I don't have too much white space, I don't have too little. I can, right? We're Goldilocks. It's the bed's just right. We can set that up, and you have control on some of this information on how you're doing it, and again, spacing before and spacing after within our style guides will help as well. But I'm able to quickly get a different look, a comfortable material for delivery purposes based off how I break it up and using white space to my benefit. The nice thing with LeaderGuide Pro, you don't have to really think about white space. The table and the choices that are set up in there are going to make it a lot easier for you. And you can just really worry about which content blocks am I using and the material that's going into it. So after white space, the last one, it's a nice one to sum it all up. We're back to my favorite word, consistent. Be consistent in our formatting, right? On these, it's, I'm not going to jump back into showing some things in LeaderGuide Pro. It's, you've already seen it, but the choices that we make, we want to do them the same as much as possible, right? I'd say 90% of the time, these are the items that we do, because we should plan for what happens all the time, not for the exceptions. And then we've got that 10%, probably more like 5%, where things don't really fall within our normal standards, and now we can put some energy into that. But be consistent. Actually, I am going to flip back over here real quick. The way LeaderGuide Pro really makes it easy for us to put the formatting in is the use of tables. Right? By putting in tables, we get a consistent layout, how my images fall into column, right? How do those icons fall into column 1? How does the text line up in column 2? Right? We've got our visual cue, we've got some sort of headline, and driving actions off this visual cue. And then, for me, I like to do whatever's in column 2 is information that's being delivered into the classroom. It's items that we're saying, it's slides that we're showing, it's videos that are playing. And then I use column 3 if there was specific information that the facilitator producer needs to be aware of or to be doing, but not actually putting it into class. Right? So if, just to give you that as an idea, let's say we're going to put in a question, ask, what are the 7 steps of XYZ? Maybe over in the 3rd column, I'm going to give a headline of listen for, right, and put in those answers. So we're asking the question, but I also have the answers over on, specific items that I want them to be aware of over here. Now, then after this, I may drive home into some of those points in other content blocks, but if we only got 3 of the 7, we got to circle back or things like that. So column 3 for me is information I want the facilitator to be aware of or be doing, but it's not going into the class itself. So tables really help lay out our formatting. But again, coming back to my favorite word today, consistent. Consistent is the word, consistent is what's going to help us create more professionally formatted guidebooks, right? Choices that we make maybe at the end of the day, we chose the wrong color, or the colors, the font is off. If we've consistently done it, it's easy to make those fixes, especially in LeaderGuide Pro, where we're no longer Times New Roman. It needs to be, sticks 2 times. I don't know. You can go through and quickly update the style guide and then reapply it to the document. Reapply it to our LeaderGuide Pro document using the attach function. But those were the main items today. So to kind of sum it back up, we're looking at 6 things. Have a visual identity, right? If it's starting off with your branding and style guidelines, go there. But in the key thing for a great program is have a consistent structure and organization to it. I strongly recommend going back to our structure of tell them what I tell them with an introduction module, summary lesson. Bookend it with a conclusion module, summary lesson, and then have your modules and lessons right in that hierarchical structure that everyone understands from an outline. People find comfort in the known. So we know the structure, use it. It also allows us to build either the entire program, or we can build individual pieces that can be used standalone or later stitched together to build an overall program. So, just be consistent in the visual cues, the icons that we use. Hopefully those are tied to our visual identity, to logos and art styles and color, those type of things. How do we handle images? Where do we put them? Right? Smart art, all of those things. Be consistent. Stick with with readable typography based off the medium that we're delivering. Let me pop back over here. There's a question that came over. When you say apply the style guide after that fact, is that based on the previously created collection? Yes, there is a function. Let me come back here so I can show it. Here. On LeaderGuide Pro, there is the capability in the Start section. At the bottom, it's a paperclip. If I could draw a consistent arrow. So this paperclip, in a LeaderGuide Pro document, when I click on this, it's going to pull up a dialog box. So based off the guidebook that I'm in, whether it's participant or facilitator, I get to choose, and when I'm choosing facilitator or participant, it's really looking at the collection, which templates is it going to be looking at. So is it going to be looking at the style guides for the facilitator style guides or the participant style guides, right? What's my column structure? I generally recommend leaving these alone. Like whatever we built out our guidebook for, keep these the same, just for so you don't add in another layer of, I don't want to say difficulty, but another layer. But we can choose it. Maybe we're choosing a different collection, right? I want to use the Office 365 Colors collection, or I want to use my ABS collection or my Skinny collection that's maybe using different icons or it's using different fonts. And so once something's created, if I'm just updating icons, my fonts, my headers or footers, I can do the attach features. If I'm getting in because I've updated my cover page or things like that, I wouldn't do an attach, I would do an extract. But that's a question probably, or that's for a different session to dive down that path. But attach allows us to quickly apply updated templates, part of my collection, to my document. I hope that answers your question. All right, white space, use it. Don't jam everything together. Again, we want our facilitators to be able to glance down, be back up in front of the camera, or be back up in front of the class. And then lastly, again, be consistent in our formatting. And if we have a visual identity and we're consistent in our formatting, which includes all these other things in between them, right? Kind of bookended it. It's amazing how these things almost work like I put these into play, right? Those two things are really going to take care of everything else underneath it. All right. So with that being said, I want to thank everyone for coming. I don't know if people have seen this. We announced we've got a limited amount of slots to help people develop courses. And it's not, this is the idea. You've got your PowerPoints, you've got your notes, but you just need help getting the stuff into actual LeaderGuide Pro format to make it easier to deliver. We've got this sale. If you're interested, there's a QR code that you can scan. When we send out the video, there'll also be a link so you can just get to it from there. But if you want it, take a look. They are filling up fast, so it would be something, consider that price, to be honest. That's highway robbery. But it's a great benefit for you guys. So I would go, if you can, go for it, or bring it to the people that would be interested into it. But with that, I know my 20 to 30 minutes went to 42. So I apologize about I'm going to update these now to 45 minutes because that's where I seem to be coming because I can't stop talking. But with that, I hope everyone has a great day. Unless you have any questions, if you do, reach out to me. I'm here to help, and we will see you guys all soon. All right, take care, folks.